Hey kids, I hope you're having a good week. If you don't have a Bible, get one and turn to Acts chapter 8. We're going to look in our Bible a good bit today. So we've kind of finished up section 4 of our New Testament geography. We're going to move on, but we're still just kind of going in order. So this is in Acts chapter 8. So we know that Philip proclaims Christ in Samaria. That's kind of the last thing that we looked at. And now we're going to see Philip and the eunuch. A lot of people say the Ethiopian eunuch. So our next point our next point in geography is the road from Jerusalem to Gaza. And this is where Philip met the Ethiopian eunuch. And you see in Acts chapter 8 verses 26, now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, rise and go toward the south to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. So, an angel of the Lord directly told Philip where to go. And why that's so important is, how did Philip know where to go? The angel told him a direct location, told him a road to go on and where to find this person. And it's important to know this point because of the story we're about to look at. It all happened because Philip was going to a specific location. That's why this geography stuff is so cool. But now we're going to see the Ethiopian eunuch and kind of look at it. So Acts chapter 28 verse 27, it says, he rose and went, and there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official, Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all her treasure. He had come to Jerusalem to worship and was returning, seated in his chariot, and he was reading the prophet Isaiah. And the Spirit said to Philip, go over and join his chariot. So Philip read to him and heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and asked, do you understand what you're reading? And he said, how can I unless someone guides me? And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. Now the passage of the scripture that he was reading was this: like a sheep he was led to the slaughter, like a lamb before its shearer is silent. So he opens not his mouth. In his humiliation justice was denied him. Who can describe his generation? For his life is taken away from the earth. And the eunuch said to Philip, about whom, I asked you, does the prophet say this? About himself or about someone else? Then Philip opened his mouth, and beginning with this scripture, he told him the good news about Jesus. And as they were going along the road, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, see, here's water. What prevents me from being baptized? And he commanded the chariot to stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip and the eunuch, and he baptized him. When they had come up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord carried Philip away, and the eunuch saw him no more, and went on his way rejoicing. But Philip found himself at Azotus, and he passed through and preached the gospel all the towns, and he had came to Caesarea. So Philip goes on the road from Jerusalem to Gaza. That's where he finds this man. And the Ethiopian eunuch, he was from Ethiopia, obviously. Ethiopia is several hundred miles from Jerusalem. This man that we're looking at here was a very important man. It talked about how he was in charge of all the money of the queen, how he's in charge of her treasure. So he'd come to Jerusalem to worship, and it was on his way back home. So he was reading from the prophet Isaiah, and he didn't understand what he was reading. And the angel told Philip to approach him. So he went up to him, and he kind of asked him, do you understand what you're reading? And the Ethiopian eunuch said, how can I unless someone guides me? So he kind of told him everything. He told him, start from Isaiah, told him the prophecy, told him the great news of Jesus. And they went up to water, and he said, what hinders me from being baptized? And Philip ended up baptizing him, and it's a great story. But the main thing we want to understand here is the geography, and how Philip went on the road from Jerusalem to Gaza to meet this man, and how God can provide us in certain points of our lives. He'll put us in situations. Maybe at the school you're at the job, you might move to different cities or different states. Maybe God is doing that because he wants you to reach a certain person, just like he wanted Philip to do. But here we have the home of the eunuch was Ethiopia. And, why is that important? Because, if you just say the Ethiopian eunuch, people can know, oh, that's the man that Philip baptized in Acts 8, chapter 2. When you think about the story, he was the one that said, what hinders me from being baptized? Knowing where people come from can help you remember certain things. But just an application to learn from this story is how God can use us, where we're at in different locations. We're always on the mission field. We're always trying to bring people to Jesus. Mission work doesn't just happen in foreign countries. It happens right here in our community, our homes, and in your school. And we've already talked about how God doesn't just want preachers and ministers to evangelize. Everyone needs to. And one thing to learn from the story was and we can find people in life that maybe are really spiritual, or maybe want to do good, but they just don't understand what they need to do. Or maybe they even read the Bible and they just don't quite understand it, so they just need a little help. And that's where, as Christians, we can be there to encourage and to guide and to help people understand that Jesus came and He lived and He died for us. And then we can help people understand the steps of salvation in order to reach their home in heaven. Thank you. I hope all of you have a good week.